Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am so excited for who I have coming on tonight. So I have my fabulous sister, Evelyn Bautista-Miller. And for some reason, my lighting just stopped. So excuse me while I turn my computer back on so my lighting can come back on. And what I'm especially excited about is that tonight we're going to talk about service, turning your service into your passion into service, and really thinking about how are we centering our passion areas, our gifts, talents, and abilities into things that we can maximize for ourselves, things that we can maximize to improve the world. First of all, I want to acknowledge that we are in a very, very challenging time in our nation. The light is back on. Thank you. So I want to acknowledge that tonight. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the violent insurrection that occurred in Washington, D.C. For me, I'm going to talk for myself. It was triggering. It was traumatizing. And I had to take time to myself yesterday and ground. I took a bath with some incense and some amazing smelling Epsom salt because I had to connect with what was going to help me thrive, what was going to help me feel alive, particularly because sometimes those situations bring up traumas. Racial trauma is very real. And so healing justice is the response to that, in my opinion, where we get to center ourselves, center our joy in the midst of the fighting to disrupt systems of oppression and inequity, in the midst of working, grinding hard, right? Grinding hard is important. It's important to be fully present in what's happening. And we still get to experience joy. We still get to center our wellness, and we still get to feel all of our feelings. So everything that has come up for everyone that's on this live, if you're hearing the replay after, whatever has come up for you, allow all those feelings. Allow all those feelings. Be present with what's showing up. Notice where it is residing in your body. For me, when I'm feeling anxious, it resides in my stomach, right? That's why my stomach's so big, right? All the stressors in the world. That's why I blame it on the stressors in the world, right? So I wanted to start with that grounding practice. Acknowledging that what's happened yesterday is horrendous. Racism, and it was televised, right? If the folks that were in the Capitol looked like me or were of darker hue, the results of what occurred would have been very, very different. We all know that. We know this to be true. We know that this is America. This is America, right? Don't catch them slipping up. Don't get me started, right? So anyway, so this is topic for today is not about that. But I did want to acknowledge that I am a social worker. I got the degree just to sort of qualify me, but I was like born into this stuff. So I walk and breathe the disruption of inequity, of oppression, and the disruption of inequity and oppression. And so tonight, though, I'm excited. So Miss Tender Steps of New York, we are interviewing and chatting with and having a candid conversation with Evelyn Bautista-Miller. And so she somehow has disappeared from our conversation. And so we're going to welcome her back. So Evelyn, please come back and ask to join. And then I will put you in. I'm trying to add you from the screen, and it says unable to join. So I don't know what you're doing, mama, but let's get it on and popping. So Evelyn, you probably have to step out and then come back in, and then we could get it started. So let me tell you a little bit about Evelyn before she joins us. So Evelyn is my Irish twin sister. What do I mean by that? So Evelyn and Audi, they're twins. They were born in November of 1975. And Cindy was born in October of 1976. So y'all folks that are Latinx and understand that you're supposed to guardar la cuarentena, right? You're supposed to not have any intimacy, if you get what I'm saying, within 40 days of having a baby. Understand that the numbers indicate that our parents did not hold the cuarentena. So that means that right after my mother had a set of twins, she had me. And so what's exciting about that is that I sort of grew up with siblings that were like twins, like triplets. I believe we were like triplets, but I was always like, I wasn't down because, twins, if you're a twin. Hi, Evelyn.
So that means that right after my mother had a set of twins.
Yes.
And so what's exciting about that is I sort of grew up.
I had to do a different joining.
Oh, so turn that off, darling.
Yes, my dear.
I'm hearing an echo.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, so what's interesting about Evelyn and I, so I was sharing the story, I'm sure you heard it, right? That my mom had a set of twins, my mom and my dad, because she needed someone to help her facilitate that process, right? So they had a set of twins. Mind you, they also had Sofia Bautista-Miller, who is 2 years older than the twins, who I interviewed a few weeks ago. Then she also had Rufina Beltrán, who is a year before Sophia, right? Am I getting that right, Sophia? Sophia's on here. Thank you for joining us. Make sure I get my facts right. Sophia always gets her facts together. And so, my mother had 4 children, and then I came along. So what's wonderful about that, I was saying, Evelyn, is that we grew up sort of like triplets, kind of, right? Where I was always like in their face, and they were always like pushing me along, like, what are you doing here? And Evelyn and I used to quarrel when we were teens, right? We were really close. Mucho, mucho amor, como dice Walter Mercado, Roseanne, absolutely. And so we became really close in our teens, which I absolutely loved because we got to sneak around. So we would tell our mom, it's a good thing that mom doesn't have Instagram. Sophia, I love that Sophia gives us the facts. So in 1971, she had Rufina. Maybe we could get her on Instagram Live. I don't know. Then in 73, Sophia. And then in 75, so it was a 2-year stint. But something happened in 75. We got to look up what was going on in the world that I came 11 months later. But anyway, it's not about me. So I started Candid Conversations because I love hearing people's stories. Particularly, I wanted to have conversations with people about journey and life lessons that help support their triumph, their growth, their success. So oftentimes as folks of color, we hear the tragedy stories, right? But we don't often hear the tragedies along with what we did with those tragedies. What do we do with those complications? And so that's what Candid Conversations is about. It's about having dialogue with people who I love and care about. And so for the last couple of weeks, if you haven't caught them on IGTV, definitely do that. I've also have some of the conversations on YouTube, so you can look it up on Cindy Bautista-Thomas. And let's get started. So Evelyn Bautista-Miller, an interesting fact about Evelyn, which she might not share, is that not only is she a social worker, but she also has her school district administration license. So she has 2 master's degrees and a bachelor's in social work. And the funny fact about that,
and a bilingual certification.
Come on, because she's gonna let me know. And her LMSW. Hello. Let's put it all on the table, right? She is also the executive director. You heard that, executive director of Tender Steps of New York, and Evelyn will share with us what Tender Steps of New York is about in a moment. And she also, Are you taking the list down? She's also a mother of 4 children, all under the age of 13. You heard that right. And also, she is part of Zeta Phi Beta sorority. She is also a loving friend, a loving comadre. She is the godmother of the oldest of the Bautista children, mother and father Bautista children. We have other grandchildren, but they're from father's side. But she's also my comadre. She's also my prayer warrior partner. So every morning, Evelyn and I, well, we try to do it every morning. We try.
When you don't dodge my call.
We pray every morning for about 5 to 10 minutes, and we start our day by grounding, right? We pray first, and then we do bochinche. No, not all the time. Right? And also, I mean, are y'all exhausted yet? Because I'm tired, right? But it's also so inspiring. She's also the most loyal friend you could ever have. Such a tenacious, loving, persevering spirit that loves connecting with people, not just on Facebook or Instagram. It took Evelyn forever to get on Facebook. She was definitely a latecomer with Facebook, but it was because she actually calls people. Like, I asked her, oh, have you heard from so-and-so from like 20 years ago? She's like, oh yeah, we spoke last week. Yeah, we spoke last week. I'm like, who has time for that? Like, how do you run a household? She's a loving wife, right? A sibling of all of us, right? Where pre-COVID, we used to get together often. So I wanted to tell you all of that about Evelyn, because she might not share all of those, and I probably missed a couple of things because she's actually a board member of a couple of organizations, I think. So at this time, Evelyn, please share with us anything that I didn't already say.
I am a natural advocate. And sometimes it leads me to different situations, but it just makes me feel good to know that I could sleep at night and I can advocate and feel good about myself.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. And so our discussion today is about turning your passion into service and also sharing your time management technique, right? Like, how do you do that while maintaining joy, while being self-aware about who you are as a woman of color, as a Latinx woman of color, in the world of social work, as right now you are a school social worker for children and families that are living in transitional housing, right? And that in and of itself is a whole other level of energy, right? And your tenaciousness and resiliency has evoked inspiration in the families that you work with, in the staff that you are in community with. And so I said to Evelyn, I said, we got to talk about it. So Evelyn is our first Candid conversation for 2021. So
Wepa
is right. And thank you all for joining us. So first of all, Evelyn, why did you become a social worker? Right?
Well, I think, to be genuine, I think we got to go back to where I came from, right?
Come on. Yes.
Growing up, first generation, we got relocated from Washington Heights because when my parents had my twin in a apartment in that area, so we ended up in projects. And basically, we're probably the few Latino-speaking families. And it was quite interesting because since mommy didn't know English, she was just figuring things out. And I can't help but to think about the fact that I always saw my mom networking, smiling, even though she didn't know the language too well, or She would make friends. She would bring food. I remember.
Evelyn, excuse me, Evelyn.
Yes.
The Wi-Fi is looking shoddy. Is there a way you could shift your Wi-Fi?
What about?
I'm seeing you pixelated, and you're coming on and off. And what you're saying is so poignant that I really need people to hear it.
Thank you for letting me know.
You know, I'm always gonna let you know. That's what I do. That's what I does. So Evelyn is fixing her Wi-Fi, and I can't wait for you to hear all of the jewels that she has to share with you, because you know, we grew up in a family of 5, and what's interesting is that there's a different perspective that each one of us has. Our niece, Evelyn, Sophia's daughter, interviewed each of us. She sent it to us. It was amazing. She interviewed each of us, and then we shared our perspective of growing up. And then she wrote it up. See, that's what happens when you've got the children. She shut the children down.
No, what I was doing was
taking notes. Are you taking notes?
So Sophia had a good suggestion, and she said to get the kids off the internet. So I had to tell the kids to get off the internet. Thank you, Sophia.
I love it. Thank you. Excellent.
So you're in the middle of saying something, Cindy.
We are right on track. On track. Okay. So you go ahead, because I loved where you were going. What I was saying was that the perspective that each of us has growing up is so different and distinct. And the fact that you went there was like, yes. So go back to we got kicked out of Washington Heights.
And then we ended up in the projects, and we were the very few Latino Spanish-speaking family. It was mostly African-American. And I remember, even though my mother didn't know English, I remember her smiling. I remember her making friends. I remember her bringing food to the manager of the project building. So like when we had issues with the apartment, he would remember the soup that she brought him the other day, and he would be like, okay, Miss Bautista. And you know, he was very sweet to my mom. And I remember her enthusiasm, her charisma. And that really made me feel like, wow, look at the way she got like honey. She was able to just work things out, you know, while Papi was a taxi driver, Papi hustling. He wasn't worried about that. Mommy was the one holding down the household, you know. And I think from seeing her maneuver that and seeing, making friends, my mom being her own entrepreneur, you know, her own businesswoman. I used to be the one that used to go with mommy to sell the clothes. Nobody wanted to go with mommy. All of y'all wanted to stay home, but I wanted to go with mommy because I wanted to get out the house because y'all were driving me crazy. And I escorted mommy. I think I kept a book with how much people paid her and what the tab was. And I enjoyed it because they would feed me, and it was older women, and they would give me advice at such a young age. So I was able to get that relationship with older people, and then it kind of like started sticking to me.
Yeah.
And I started realizing I need to build my mentorship, right? Like I need to get more people that are believing what I can do. And then in doing that, I started building passion. And then they started asking my mother to have me help them, like interpret for them.
Yeah.
And then I became like almost like an unofficial interpreter, which I didn't mind because it got me out the house sometimes. But it helped me learn that at a young age, I was privy to some sensitive situations. Like I would go and interpret at the welfare office with mommy hustling to get her food stamps. And they would treat my mom so bad. Well, our mom so bad. And then I would say to them, you really want me to tell this to my mom? I think I almost checked them, like in a nice way, like a young girl trying to be mindful. And I think they realized that they weren't really being nice. It was very unethical what they were doing. And that's how social work and compassion and empathy started like piercing into me, you know?
I love that. And anyone that meets Evelyn for the first time, first of all, like she'll stick to you like glue. If your energy's right, let's be clear. You don't just stick to anybody, right?
Well, thank you for clarifying.
But what I find so amazing. Like Evelyn will think about the most interesting things. Like recently I got something in the mail and I'm like, who sent me this? And I posted it on social media and I'm like, who did this? So I'm talking to Evelyn. I'm like, somebody sent me something and to celebrate something that's happening next week. And and Evelyn was like, that was me. Like, she's just so humble. Like, she didn't text, like, oh, something's coming in the mail. So let's go back, right? Because I digress because I love what you're talking about. So I remember those days when nobody wanted to go and you were the one to go. And then when you didn't feel like going because you were busy, mom would be like, oh, you want to come? And we grew up in Highbridge Gardens Project. There's like 8 or 9 buildings there, I think. So my mother sold to so many people in the different buildings. So when you went into a building, we were going to like 8 or 9 apartments. And she was tracking down her money with her little notebook, right? Paying our Catholic school tuition. Hello, right? And so at what point did you say to yourself, I have this gift and I want to contribute to the world in this particular way as a social worker?
I think when when I would get a response from them, the people who I was helping, and how grateful that they were, it just like it made my heart feel so full. Like that was my payment. They didn't hook me up with money or anything, but they would hook me up with, Doña, deja que ella venga un ratito pasar tiempo conmigo. Like they would tell my mother in Spanish, oh, you could bring her to me anytime and we can spend time. And sometimes I did take advantage of that offer. I would tell mommy, ¿puedo ir donde Fela? Mommy, can I go to Fela's house? Or
yes.
Can I go to Deacon Alfonso house? Because that was what fed me. That's what made me feel like purposeful and helpful. And it made me feel good.
Wow. So did you know when you went to SUNY Albany as an EOP, right?
EOP, you know me.
Educational Opportunity Program, right? So, and for those that don't know, SUNY Albany's Educational Opportunity Program is a program for individuals that come from low-income housing and that may need academic support. And so when you decided to go to SUNY Albany, did you know that your major was going to eventually be social work?
No.
You didn't?
Not at all. No. I was just looking at the classes. EOP is such a great program because they have you take these mandated classes. And I think one of them was communication. And that's when I said it sparked the interest. I'm like, communication, I love talking. So let's do this. And then I started just looking into programs.
Wow. And what's really funny about Evelyn and I is that I did go to SUNY Albany as a freshman. And then I transferred to SUNY Stony Brook. And I got into the social work bachelor program at Stony Brook. Evelyn was in the bachelor program at SUNY Albany. And we had no idea that we were doing social work as bachelor students. Isn't that funny? Because
I think I only found out when I went to your bachelor graduation. You know what it is? Because we always talked about everything else that honestly, you were in Stony Brook, I was in Albany, and we didn't talk about it. And then I said, I didn't know you were going for your bachelor's in social work.
Right. And
yeah.
And a fun fact is that we both graduated with our MSW together from SUNY Albany.
And it was because I did the advanced standing for the year, and then I hung out for one of the other semesters, and then it worked out that I graduated with you. It was amazing.
But thank God, because I got to live with you and Nena. Evelyn had a freaking pit bull that bit my nose, but that's another conversation for another.
Wait, don't make it seem like there was blood everywhere. Don't be dramatic. She loved you a lot, and she was showing you some love. But let me tell you, that pit bull protected me when I moved to the Boogie Down Bronx.
No, but
when I moved back from the Albany.
Let's talk about, so I get to Albany, because I think people need to understand the essence of Evelyn Bautista-Miller. So Evelyn is living in Albany. I decide I need to get the heck out of the Bronx to go to SUNY Albany because my parents would drive me crazy. I remember I had gotten a scholarship, full ride to Hunter, to Stony Brook and to SUNY Albany through the GTOP program. And I remember I was like, I am not going to be home. I'm leaving. And Evelyn said, no, you could come live with me. So Evelyn, I had my first car. I remember that night. My first time I ever rode more than 30 minutes was driving to Albany to move in with Evelyn. Do you remember, Evelyn, you were driving behind me? I don't know if you
Yes, ma'am. I was worried for you.
So I had no idea where we were going. So we get to Albany, and Evelyn is living like in the hood of Albany, like the hood, right? And Evelyn was like, oh, the rent here is only $300. I was like, what? Pero mira, it was a beautiful apartment.
It was $350.
$350. They don't make them like they used to. And so you were so loving and welcoming to me. I remember that you welcomed me into your home. You was already dating your husband at the time. So here I come crowding in your space. And I'll never forget that, because you were so welcoming, so loving, wanted so much for me to be connected. And we weren't getting along as teenagers that much. It was only after, I think, like 17 or 18 when we started hanging out and lying to my mother about where we were, that we started to scheme together, is when we got closer, right?
And then you started borrowing my clothes, and then I was like, wait a minute, cogelo suave, take it easy.
What? A sister lost some weight, and I was using Evelyn's clothes. And that was, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Evelyn would be like, is that my shirt? Y'all that have siblings, you know what we're talking about, right? Y'all know what we're talking about. And we still lived. We loved each other. Evelyn and I didn't get into fist fights. She and Audi did, but I didn't. We didn't really fist fight, but that's a whole nother story. So you get to SUNY Albany, you get your bachelor's in social work, you get your master's in social work, right? And I love that Roseanne is sharing that you were one of the first people that she met in Albany, and you introduced yourself because you had letters. And what that means for y'all non-sorority folks is that when you're in a sorority, you get letters. So Evelyn pledged Zeta Phi Beta, right? What year did you pledge?
95.
95. And in that year, I remember our
In the fall.
grandmother passed away, right? Yeah.
During that time.
Right. And then Evelyn was very close to my grandma. They were like kindred spirits. My grandma was very spiritual, very quiet, very humble, but also not a force to be reckoned with. My mother used to lie to my grandmother because my mother used to let us hang out. Sophia used to take all of us to house parties. And my mom would let us go, and we would come home at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning at like 14, 15 years old. But when my grandmother was in town, it was shut down, right? So Evelyn, talk about what I loved about you growing up is that you had so many different friends in so many different circles. And when we talk about turning passion, right, turning your passion into service, you were doing that even back then, right? Because you were taking people to appointments, sharing resources. Like, how did you decide what area of social work you were going to go into?
I think I was thinking about how I can better help my colleagues or my friends. And there was a lot of situations that would happen that I needed more help on how to be better at it, right? Because they want you to be competent in a certain area. And I knew that I had a deficit and I wanted to learn more.
Wow. Okay. So when you graduated from SUNY Albany, I remember that your first job, this is how skilled Evelyn was, that she was always somebody's social worker, somebody's leader, because you have this innate leadership quality. If you haven't noticed already, there's something about the Bautista blood that we just like what came out of our mom, like wanting to run stuff, right? And so Evelyn was always like, I remember I just told her daughters the other day that from Evelyn was like 8 or 9 years old, she was gathering things and saying, this is for my apartment. Like, you want to talk about visualizing goals? She always knew, like, I'm going to have my own apartment because we shared a room, 4 of us in a room, right? And so your first job, tell us about your first job.
My first job was as a supervisor in a foster care agency, supervising 4 caseworkers. And one of them I actually hired that went to SUNY Albany. So it was a position that was so incredible. I just graduated. I was, I think, 22 at the time. And taking the train from 187th Street, going down to Manhattan, and meeting all these foster parents and biological parents. I used to cover my caseworkers in the courthouse if we had like 2 or 3 cases at the same time. It was an incredible job. It really was. Wow. Until my heart couldn't take it anymore. And I wasn't feeling confident of decisions that I was forced to make as a supervisor, and my heart wasn't settling. So I did that for about 1.5 years, and I was sad to go because I had the best supervisor. To this day, I'm still in touch with her.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
We send each other Christmas cards.
Of course.
And I visit her at least once a year, and she's been a mentor. So yeah, it was an incredible experience.
Wow. And so you did child welfare work, and I love that you talk about. So it sounds like to me that your values were no longer aligned with the agency practices.
That's correct.
And you were like, I need to get the heck out of here, right?
Yeah.
Scott Boogie's on the line. Hubby's on the line. I love it. That's what support looks like. So, Evelyn, you met Scott in college, right? How many years have y'all been married? Just to give him a shout out.
So we started dating in 94.
Wow.
So we kick in many years, talk about maybe 26 years, and married 15. Yeah.
Wow. And we have to give homage to Scott Miller, because anyone that's married to any of the Bautista girls gotta know that y'all are holding it down for us. We're very ambitious. We want a lot. We do a lot. And we love hard and we play hard, right?
And often ridiculous.
Ridiculous, okay? I'm so glad to see you, Shahili. Thank you for joining. So let's talk about you and this trajectory that took you into the service. Like what? So you were a social worker in the field. I became a school social worker because Evelyn was a school social worker. And I have to share how you became a school social worker. Because I will never forget the day you called me and you were like, I need to get out of this agency. I remember that. And you said, I think I want to do school social work. And Evelyn Bautista-Miller went to every single school in the Bronx and delivered her resume to every district office in the Bronx. Did you hear what I said? And when she told me that she did that, I was like, is she crazy? I was like, how did you just showed up and dropped your resume off? She made sure she met somebody. She made
got a name.
Tell about it. So talk about that, because there's people here that want to do something and they get discouraged and they're not sure, like, at what regard and what level of tenacity do you have when you have a goal of being in service in a certain way? So what came to your mind that said, I need to do it this way? I'm just curious.
So I knew that I wanted to leave the foster care agency, but I know that I had to pay rent, right? I wasn't living back home. I had my own place. So I said, I'm going to have to look for a job in the Department of Education, you know? And like you said, this was back in the days when you were able to walk into districts and just, you know, schmooze and talk and say, hey. And I met this amazing director of, I would say, of pupil personnel at the time. And we're talking about 21 years ago, by the way. And basically, I guess my personality was very charismatic, and he was intrigued, and I was telling him what I was doing, the job that I'm doing, but that I felt like I wanted to do more. And I showed him my resume, and you know what's interesting? I even had surgery on my foot, and I was looking for a job. So I think unintentionally I was going to jobs with a cane. It wasn't like I was trying to use it, but now that I think about it, you know what it is? That was the only time I had a break to look for a job. So then I was looking for a job like that, and then I think they felt bad, but then again they saw that I was like really like into what I was like, my conviction. And then I had a few interviews, and then I ended up, you know, at one of the districts. And then I said to the director, I have someone who's just as amazing as I am. And he said, who's that? I said, my younger sister.
And the funny story about that is not only did Evelyn get into the DOE, but then Evelyn came to me not once, not twice, but three times. So when she first got into the DOE, she was like, Cindy, they have a position. I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm a supervisor. I'm good. And she was like, okay. A few months later, Evelyn's tenacity, but also Evelyn has a knowing that I think you're just now learning to embrace. She had a knowing about that I needed to be in the DOE, because she came to me a few months later and she said, Cindy, there's another position. I was like, no, I'm good. I was first a caseworker, then I was a supervisor. I was like, I'm good. I'm a supervisor now. She was like, okay. Then my values no longer aligned with what I was doing. And when Evelyn came that third time, I said, I was ready. And I
remember it. I remember pumping gas and telling you about it. And you went, I'm going to do it, Evelyn.
And I said, I'm ready. And not only did she take me, but she also took my supervisor. Right? I have to give Evelyn the homage, because I would not be getting my doctorate in education if it were not for you, because you welcomed me into the world of school social work, which I fell in love with the field. I fell in love with the work, eventually did higher ed in social work, and then pursued research in school social work because of you knowing, having a knowing. And often Evelyn does that. Like, she'll suggest certain things to people and me all the time. And did you think about doing this? And I'm like, no, actually I didn't. And then it becomes this amazing thing, right? And so eventually you were in the Board of Ed and became a school leader, went and got your SDA while having children, by the way, right? You were having children, getting married, getting other degrees, pursuing different areas. And what year did you decide that you would create your passion of Tender Steps of New York? Because that was very special.
So when I realized that we weren't going to have more kids, I would have kept going, but we were broke before the first one. So, you know, so I said, I want another baby. Like, and then I said, oh my goodness, I knew that all the advocacy that I was doing in the county that I live in, I said, I need to create something so that I can continue to support in a different fashion. So then that's how Tender Steps of New York was born.
Wow. And so, you know, and it wasn't easy, right? You had to figure out how do I start a nonprofit? Who do I get as board members? What's my mission and vision, right? And Evelyn, because of the amazing energy that you carry and the gifts that you bring to the table as a leader, as a coordinator, you're a connector, you bring people together. She was able to get someone to do the website, social media, like this, all these different ways of connecting that you were able to put forth because of who you are and what you bring to the work. And what I want to highlight, so every year, Tender Steps of New York has a fundraiser, right? And there's one coming up. Please share with us when it's coming up.
We're gonna actually celebrate it on the April 17th of 2021, because the former mayor of Spring Valley, Mayor DeHome, he declared it the Tender Steps of New York Day in 2015 when Dr. Betty Rosa was my keynote. So because last year we canceled our fundraiser because at the beginning of the pandemic, it's exciting to bring it in a virtual way. And we're going to do it on the day that it's considered 10 the Steps of New York, Incorporated.
Wow. So you have a website, right? What's the website?
It's www.tenderstepsofny.org. Excuse me.
Excellent. So Evelyn's fundraisers, if anyone on here has ever been to a fundraiser of 10 Steps of New York, first of all, you need to get your ticket quick because it sells out usually. And one year, there were so many people that showed up that didn't buy tickets in advance that folks were literally sitting on the floor, right? Like that's the kind of energy that you bring to the space. And we're talking about community members, but community leaders like the New York State Regents. What's her title? Betty Rosa? Well, I know she's doing something else now, but the people
she moved up. She's the commissioner,
right?
education.
Now she's the education commissioner. But she has mayors, town clerks, deputies. That I remember one year I was helping her with registration, and they were like, "Yeah, because is Evelyn around?" I'm like, "Sure," And then the person said, "Well, I didn't buy my ticket. Is it okay if I give a check?" And I was like, "Sure." They were like, "How much is the ticket?" I think it was like $50. And they wrote a check out for $500, right, to the organization. And so I want you to acknowledge, because I think that sometimes we're doing, that we don't get time to sort of sit in the excellence of who we are and sit in our gifts. And I tell Evelyn this all the time. I said, you don't even understand the power that you possess. And if you really, really embraced it, like it would be unbelievable.
But I think it's important, Cindy, that I acknowledge how it comes to that point, because I always say that I don't know everything, but I know somebody that will know and will get me somebody that knows. And that's what makes me unique, because I do, like you were joking about how I always had friends from all the corners of the projects and all this stuff, but every friend filled a piece of me differently. And even though they weren't knowledgeable in everything, just like I'm not knowledgeable in everything, but they were people who supported me in different parts of my life. Like there's people who were really good friends back in the days. They're still my colleague now, but they know that I'm there for them, and I'm there for them, and they're there for me. And whenever I need them, it's like we picked up from where we left off. And that's what friendship and being collegiate and helping one another, because I help people from different times in their life when they're going through something, and it goes the other way around. Nobody's life is perfect. And that's what helps me get stronger, and that's what helps me inspire. So there's people in my life that they don't realize that they actually inspire me and help me continue with my flow. There's different people that I call and I say, I cannot figure out how to do this. They say, I got somebody. You know how you have a friend that says, I know somebody. I have so many of those wonderful people that I really cherish, and they're grateful for what I do for them as well.
I mean, that is amazing, because Evelyn is a social worker, but she could very well be a construction project manager. I witnessed Evelyn giving birth to her first son, who was born at 7 months. He had to be in the hospital for 30 days. And in the hospital room, right after giving birth, she had just bought her house with her husband, and she is managing the construction. She's on the phone.
Wait, but Cindy, I have to interrupt and rewind for a second. When he came early, we were busy painting the condo, and Scott was like, where are we going? I said, I don't know, but we're going to buy a house.
Yes, let's talk about it.
I said, I don't know where we're going, but we're going to find something. And he looked at me like you always, like I'm a little touched, and I am, because I put it out in the atmosphere. And like Cindy was saying, when I gave birth, it was early. He had to stay for 2 weeks, actually. And then I signed the house with Scott 2 days later. And the attorney looked at me like I was losing it. He goes, Evelyn, didn't you just have your son? I said, yes, I did. And we're buying this house. And he said, all right, let's do this.
Wow. So let's talk about faith. right? Because you're talking about this unrelenting faith that you have that things are going to work themselves out. And I've seen it played out again and again and again. And you've been there for people in ways that have been unimaginable. And I see you, and you're like this little, I say, like a secret agent angel that she whoops in. You don't even know that she's there doing something. The next thing you know, there's a meal being delivered, or there's a gift that shows up at your door that's personalized, right? So talk to me about, how does God and faith play a role in how you move and groove in the world? And then we're going to get into the conversation around, like, how do you do it all with 4 hands, right?
So Sophia just wrote, didn't you also go back to work? So I didn't have much days in my, in like having a baby premature and getting paid. So I actually, because Alejandro had to be in NICU, I went back to work maybe 3 days later. And I would, I obviously did the whole milk thing, but it was because I had faith that Alejandro was good and that mommy had to be at work, and my support system, my husband. And it was like I knew, and I had the faith. And I think that has a lot to do with mommy. Mommy always had the faith. I would see her with the rosary. I remember Abuela with her rosary. She used to pray every night when she used to come from Dominican Republic and stay with us for a while. And I didn't really pray with Abuela always, but sometimes I chimed in and out with her. And I think the faith really has helped me to continue to even though things are going a little different nowadays, but it's like having faith and saying, just keep giving me what I need, right? And it's like walking with faith, right? And it's pretty much just making sure that I get what I need to get there. I have moments that I call different colleagues, different girlfriends, and they'd be like, girl, I got you. Let's pray. And I have prayer warriors, and don't get jealous, Cindy. I be having my prayer warriors too.
I got mine too. Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we can't always have the same source, and you have to be brave enough to feel comfortable in your own skin to reach out. And that's really how I'm able to do it, because sometimes I say to myself, how do I do it? I breathe and I say thank you. When something's going difficult, I say, I know you're showing me something, and I'm going to be faithful. And I want to see what it is that you're going to show me.
Wow.
It's hard sometimes, because while I'm thinking, I have my 4 kids saying they need this, they need that. And I'm just like, just you wait. Let mommy get it right. I let them know. Growing up, mommy never really told us how stressed she was and stuff. I would see her saying, me voy a like my mother used to be like, I'm getting out of here. With us 5, and we used to laugh and stuff. But now, mother of 4, I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember those days. But I'm comfortable in my skin to say to my kids, I need a moment. Mommy needs a moment,
No, so let's talk about that, right? So you have this unrelenting faith. You've taken many risks, many career risks that have each formulated into beautiful opportunities and possibilities. And I'm always so amazed at your risk taking, and have been, quite frankly, inspired. And I know sometimes Evelyn says, oh my God, I look up to you, I admire you. But I'm always in awe. Like, Evelyn has this vision that is unrelenting. She could look at a piece of caca and be like, oh my God, you know what we could do with that caca?
Don't be translating that word, Cindy.
What? Listen, I'm keeping it real. So
what if people don't know what that means?
Caca means, the poop. Like, Evelyn could look at a poopy situation and create magic, like MAGIC, right? And so, those of you know that Evelyn is a leader in the field in Rockland County. She's a leader. Like, she's gotten so many awards that I don't even know where she puts them. I don't know how many awards I've been to. And I love when I'm able to make it, I make it. She recently got honored. You have to share this, Evelyn, because this was amazing. During COVID, Evelyn called me and said to me, Cindy, I have this idea for a workshop. Would you partner with me? Could you share how you turned that passion of like, this is stressful. I'm being challenged by this situation, and I want to help support other people in the process.
So when the COVID happened in March, it was surreal. And of course, I started feeling very overwhelmed with the kids and my husband and everything, and you couldn't go anywhere. And for my character, this is a very hard time for me right now because I can't visit mommy all the time. I'm very restrained about visiting you and my other sisters. And I used to always visit my family and see them and visit my friends and go to Connecticut. And that life has been put on hold for my safety and my family's safety, you know? And I said to myself, if I'm feeling this way and I have the tools and strategies and I went to school, I can't imagine how my friends that didn't graduate from school and have their own life. I'm sure that they're probably going through some stuff. You know, I've been blessed to be able to have space in my house and all that. Imagine those that have one bedroom apartment and are going through it. So I feel very blessed and fortunate. And I said, I need to do something. So I was riding a bike with my kids. I picked up riding bikes during the pandemic. And I was thinking, what am I going to do to like inspire people? So what I said to myself was, why don't we think of doing a workshop on the 10 steps where we can redefine COVID. So it's called Redefining COVID. And the acronym of COVID is courageously overcoming in a viable, innovative, and determined way. And it made me think of mommy, how mommy, through everything she's been through, you know, she was like she only has one sister and she was the oldest and she raised, you know, her 10 brothers, changing diapers, helping abuela. And through all that, got married, had kids, moved to the United States, and still had faith and was still okay, you know? So in doing the workshop, I said, I want to do it so that people who are deaf can be part of it. So I said, I want somebody who doesn't speak English, understands that speaks Creole. I want somebody who doesn't speak English and speaks Spanish can be part of it. So what I did was I made a few phone calls. I connected with a good friend of mine that I grew up with in the project who was an older mentor, and I used to hang out with her, Antonia, and I asked her niece, who's a professional sign language interpreter, and she said, yes, I'll do it for you. And then I got a Spanish translator from this company, and it's like, it was so incredible. And the Creole speaker, all to say that I didn't know how I was going to do it. I reached out to one of my sorors and I said, I want to do this. Do you know anybody who can help me? She said, I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to find a soror that can help you do it. And sure enough, that's how because I didn't know. Wow. I was just learning the whole Zoom world.
Wow.
You know?
So what I'm hearing you say, Evelyn, in all of the narratives that you've shared so far, is that you have a vision, right? And you stick to your vision. You're very loyal to your vision. Your faith brings that vision into fruition because you choose to activate the resources that you have available to you, right? Like we all have resources that are available to us, but we don't always activate those resources. And Evelyn, if you give Evelyn your phone number, I'm always like, uh-oh, watch out. Whenever we go somewhere and Evelyn meets somebody, I'm like, once I see them pull out the phones, I'm like, you don't know what you're doing, girl, but go ahead, right? And in a good, loving way, right? Good and loving way. I love that BJ Max says you're loyal to your vision. Absolutely. Absolutely. And Bautista women, we don't play. We, and I know this to be true, you know, we come from a lineage of healers. We come from a lineage of people that are centering wellness of communities. And you could see that in all the different ways that we activate, but particularly you, Evelyn, I feel like you have that mommy's yo no sé cuánes. Like people meet me and they're like, oh my God, you're so bubbly and friendly. I'm like, wait till you meet Evelyn. And then they push me aside. They're like, they're like, I'm hanging out with Evelyn. So, Evelyn, now that we got to your passion situation, and congratulations on being your authentic self all of the time. And being your authentic self for anybody means that you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, right? And it also means that you get to live your best life, no matter what the hell people are saying around you, right? And I want to talk about the little people that I absolutely love and adore, which are my beautiful nieces and nephews, okay? And I mean, I love all my nieces and nephews, right? All of them. I really do. And I'm like that auntie. I'm the favorite of everybody. We all know that. Okay. But there's this way that Evelyn connects with her kids that is so amazing, so inspiring, that when she looks at them, I love, and I'm going to tear up. I'm going to tear up because recently they were here. And one of them, I think it was Soraya, was asking you a question. And you were doing something, right? And you stopped and you held her arms, right? I'm getting teary. And you just looked at her and you were like, what do you need? Right? Like, and that attention that you gave her for 5 seconds, was so powerful. And I wanted to save this conversation to share that with you, because you are like that with every single one of your 4 children. So tell us how old they are and how are you managing in COVID? They're in school remotely. And how are you able to gift to them all that love, connection, and attention with their individual personalities, with your needs as Evelyn, as a Bautista, right? Like, how do you do it? How do you do it for those of us that it may not come naturally? For those of us that may have been in trauma. You know, I definitely talk about, Naila was born 9 months after my father died. So I always felt like there was this disconnection because I was so distracted, right?
And I took Naila for a little bit when you were getting your little post-surgery,
girl. You saved my life. That's another conversation, right?
That's my goddaughter.
So talk about that. Talk about that, please.
I will. It is important for me to share that my children were the ones that helped me with the acronym to redefining COVID. And it's important for me to share that because they saw what they were going through and they saw what I was going through. And it was like we were brainstorming, with that. And I must say that when the assembly, Ellen Jaffe, she honored me as one of the 5 women of distinction for the New York State Assembly in August.
Wow.
And let me tell you, when I was honored with that and I brought it to my kids and I said to them, you 4 are so amazing. And of course I said to my husband, because without him, I wouldn't be able to do much of what I am able to do. I said, you all helped me get to this point that it's not so much of being acknowledged, but for people to know that I'm here to serve my community, right? There's a difference. I'm here to serve my community. And the fact that my kids were aware of that, of how much influence they are to me, that's what has helped me to continue to try my best to thrive during this pandemic. It's been tough. There's times that, you need a moment, but kids are not going to wait for a moment. Kids want what they want now. And, my oldest is 13, the other one's 12, the other one's 11. And then I have a beautiful 7-year-old who just demands all the attention in the world. And that is so difficult because I don't want her to get the short end of the stick because we're in a pandemic. But then I need my sanity too, right? So my husband and I, we often take turns because if I'm not right, then I'm going to just say cruel things. I'm going to respond very mean. And I don't want to do that to them or to myself. Right. So it's really a preservation of who I am because, from one minute to another, you can just, everything that's going on in this world, I try my best to just be narrow in my vision and my purpose. I have to remind myself that I'm living through this. We're all living through this, but I'm not going to let this get me down and not serve anymore. Because that's what I was put here to do.
Wow. That is so powerful. Like, you're going to make me cry on this live, Evelyn. Now, I remember, as a matter of fact, the reason why we're having candid conversations is because one day I did a live, and I'm not too crazy about doing videos or audios, which is something I'm merging right in the practice. But I did a live, and I don't even know what I was talking about. And Evelyn called me, and she was like, that live you did, like, it spoke life into me. Like, I was feeling kind of crappy, and I listened to it. And she said there was something about what you were saying and the way you said it. It was really inspiring.
I think I told you that I didn't want to stop listening.
Yeah.
That I was glued to the interview, and it just helped me and remind me that we need each other. You know, you cannot get better if you shut down just because you're not in the mood, or just because you're not living the life that you really wanted. You have to be honest with yourself and honest with people who you trust to continue helping you lift up or remind you as to who you used to be. Because it's easy to sometimes get lost.
Wow. I mean, you just dropped so many gems right now. Thinking about, you know, what's your purpose? And just because you're going through something, it doesn't mean that your purpose gets eliminated. And then you get to also assess where you're at and what you need. Right? Like, that's so powerful, Evelyn. And the fact that you get to be that gift to those families that you work at and their situations, and the folks in the school, right? Anyone that does any kind of school social work knows that your clients are the kids and their families, and then the teachers, the administration, everybody else, right? And that you get to gift Rockland County with Tender Steps of New York and the work that you've been doing, advocacy, the translating work, the providing this beautiful space at a shelter. Evelyn did workshops to women at a shelter for free, providing parenting skills and support and just loving and mentoring. We were supposed to do vision board workshop for the families during the pandemic, and we didn't get to do it, but we are going to figure it out.
Before. We were going to do it we planned it before the pandemic happened. And it was going to be an exciting thing. We were going to have clothes that were donated. We were going to have a rack. We were going to have it at the library. And it was going to be amazing because it was going to be women who really needs this type of support, right? And then the pandemic happened. But we're going to pick up where we left off when the coast is clear.
And I don't know if you remember this. So, Susan, thank you for saying that. Susan was my roommate in my very first apartment when I left the nest. And she said,
Susan!
that this has always been my gift, and you're so happy to embrace it. It's so funny that you said that because Evelyn was so interesting is that she, one day, before Tender Steps was created, she said, we should do some work together. We should do some things together. I was like, girl, ain't nobody got time for that. I was like, ain't nobody got time for that. Evelyn started her own company. I was part of her board. Eventually, I left the board and started Velocity Visions. And Evelyn has shown up to everything that I do, no matter where it is, no matter how far, no matter how much it costs. I did a yoga teacher training over the summer during the pandemic. And Evelyn went to I had to teach 15 hours of yoga. Evelyn attended every single session but one, and she ended up coming at the end. And I was like, what are you doing? She was like, I had to show up for you. I mean, right, this is my
I think I was driving.
I mean, I'm just like, that day you were driving, and then was giving me feedback. Cindy, when you explained the chaturanga, I was like, how you saw all that and you were driving? You're so crazy. Anyway, so all that to say, Evelyn, that I'm so proud of you. I know that you haven't even touched the surface of what you're going to gift the world. Thank you, Scott Boogie, if you're still on here, for being the amazing husband that you are, my compadre, my brother-in-law, my ace. I love you so much because we are very clear. Bautista women are very clear that if we did not have the husbands that we have, we would not be able to gift the world the way that we do. And we know that we're here for a higher purpose. And I love the way you embrace your purpose, Evelyn. I see so much greatness in you, not because you're my sister and you got the Bautista blood, but because you just are, like, your essence, your vibe. And don't ever allow anyone to take that from you. I love the jewels that you dropped tonight. So I want you to say one last thing to the people, and then we're going to open it up for some Q&A. If you have a question, put it in the question box for Evelyn.
So one important thing that I do want to share is that the reason why I didn't want to join Facebook and all that is because I actually was connected to a lot of people already, like you had said before. But what I have learned is times have changed. And just because people can't pick up the phone anymore doesn't mean they're not thinking of you. And it's a hard thing to accept sometimes, but times have changed. So it was hard to go into that, you know. But the truth is, even before the pandemic, I would write letters. I'll send cards, condolences, Christmas, holiday, you know, all that. And that's part of who I am, because that's what brings me joy, to know that it brings somebody else joy. So I think I do it more for my own healing and to continue being a blessing to others. And with nothing in return, like, this is not for me to, oh, I remember I did this and that. This year, I thought that I was going to skip doing Christmas cards. And I told my husband, unless you fill it out, you know, you fill it out, then you send it out, because I'm taking a pass. When I said that, and this was maybe 3 weeks before Christmas, I started getting all these Christmas cards. And I said, oh, I guess I'm not taking off this year. So it was a good thing, because more than ever, we need each other. More than ever.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. And folks are encouraging us to have our other siblings. So Audi is not on social media, and I don't know how he would engage in a conversation. But Lee, that she might decide to come on. She might. La Doña, we would need like a whole 3 hours because she got so much to say. We got to figure that one out. So thank you all for showing up. Evelyn, thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please put it in the question box or in the chat room. Let's open it up for a couple of questions. Anyone have a question for Evelyn? Don't be all shy. Bautista Zoom. Y'all, that's funny. We actually do have Zooms, and when we tell each other to shut up, because we talking over each other.
Oh, yeah, that's a riot.
Right? So no questions for Evelyn. I'm so surprised. Okay.
Well, this was an honor for me to be the first for the 2021. And for those that took the time to hear us out, just remember everybody has a gift. If you haven't found it, why don't you find one? And that will help you. But that will help you continue to move on, you know? Okay. So that's my advice.
Excellent. So we have a question. So Roseanne is asking, what does a day look like for you with 4 kids and a hubby?
So let's talk about the weekend. All right? The weekend, before COVID, there was always parties, birthday parties. So get up, do breakfast and all that. And Scott and I was mostly split off, take Alec to baseball and do this and do that. And then I would kidnap whoever's left, and I would take them to do errands with me. So I always taught my kids to do errands, even when they were little, like little ducklings, and they would walk. I used to bring them to workshops. I used to take them all around town, because I said to myself, I'm not staying home just because I got 4 kids and Scott has obligations. I said, they're coming with me, and I'm going to teach them how to act in public.
That's right.
And you know what? They had no choice but to behave. And I'm no correa, no belt. That's what she said, correa, belt, because that's what we grew up with, my mother in church with a belt. But no, that's how the kids were able to learn to behave, and also to see what mommy's doing. So back to the answering. And at home is really scheduling making sure that they're fed, and help them become independent. Because think about it, with all the kids, I don't, they're not, I'm not at their beck and call. I help them become independent in a lot of little ways, help the big sister, help this. So it's just a matter of knowing the things that I have to take care of, Scott has to take care of, and then of course my kids. And I didn't stop doing things that I used to do just because I had kids.
Did they eat?
I actually worked around my schedule with my kids. And my husband just wrote a note.
Did they eat today?
You know what? Sometimes, honestly, when I used to be running the streets with them, I would forget to almost feed them until they say to me, Mommy, you know, we didn't kind of eat. I'm like, oh, so then let's eat. So I help my kids get into the pattern of, we don't always have to eat. If we have something to do, make it happen and finish. Listen, because think about it. When I was having the kids back to back, I didn't not leave the house just because they had to get fed, because then you never leave the house. How about when you have a baby? You have one here, you have one here. So you just work it out and everything will fall into place.
Wow, wow. So we have oh my goodness, a few questions. I don't know. I'm surprised that Instagram is not kicking us off. So Susan asked this question, is interesting. How do you find time?
I think that a minute to me is so crucial because I'm a beast. If I know I got a minute to do something, I'm like tunnel vision and I hurry up and get it done before I forget. And that's how I maximize my time. Because you know who taught me that? My older sister, Lee. She says if you're cleaning or doing something, you got to time yourself. Because then, well, not got to time yourself, but she gave me that advice many years ago. So I would be mindful of my time. And that's how I maximize.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. So I'm going to do one more. Sofia Bautista-Miller wants to know, this is a funny question. How many hours a night do you sleep?
I don't sleep too much because I think that my mind just always has something that needs to get done and want to get done. And I don't sleep too much, to be quite honest. But I do make up the time, though. I make it up. I do. I'm not going to lie and say that, you know, that I don't make up my time. But there's times that I honestly don't sleep too much.
Okay, we have one last question. I love this question, Susan. What's an overarching goal that you still strive to achieve, Evelyn?
Okay, so Sophia has a doctorate. You're getting your doctorate this month. So I'm going to get mine too.
Ooh, child.
That's an overachieving because I don't know how I'm going to do it, but it's going to get done.
Okay, and I see that because there's not a goal Evelyn doesn't put forth that she does not achieve. And we're all here to support your journey. That's how
Thank you, Cindy.
So Evelyn, this was so enjoyable. I love you so much. Not because you're my sister, but you're like, I love that I get to have sisters that I could also call my friends. I know that not everyone has that. And so I take that blessing with so much love that I could call Evelyn about anything at any time, any place, and say, hey, and she's there for me and for so many other people. And so thank you so much. Thank you for gifting us and talking about how you've turned your passion into service, literally in so many different ways. The tools that you gave us about purpose, about finding why are you here, and not allowing obstacles to get in the way of that, right? That's just amazing. And so those of you will find the recording on Instagram TV and also on YouTube under Cindy Bautista-Thomas. I also want to let you know that tomorrow, Velocity Visions Inc. is dropping their podcast, Self-Care to Success in 15 Minutes. So you can go to Velocity.
Wait, say it again. Say it again. Say the title again.
Success in 15 minutes or less. So we just called it Self-Care to Success. So the idea is that we're going to give you tips for self-care in 15 minutes or less. And so check it out. Give us your feedback. You know, we're testing it out because as I shared earlier, I don't do audio, but I'm going to give it a try. And then also, I have a vision board workshop, which Evelyn attends every vision board workshop, by the way. I have one coming up Saturday, February 6th. We have a few tickets left. So if you're interested, definitely grab your tickets and have an amazing evening. Tender Steps of New York, please follow them. Please donate, put them on your list to give them what they need so they can continue supporting the communities that need it the most. Have a wonderful night. Vete a miar pa que te acuestes, Sofia.
Oh my goodness.
My mother used to say that to us. Like, what's that about? Go pee and go to sleep.
Well, that's the point is tomorrow's another day.
Exactly. All right.
So conquer everything you want. Take care.
Bueno.
Thank you. Adiós.
Oh, that was so beautiful.